have some news right now. The Trump administration has completely shut down the USAID website, which is the agency responsible for humanitarian assistance around the world.
No. USAID is not just a humanitarian aid organization. It is a front in order to run covert intelligence ops around the world to do coups and regime change operations and all kinds of other criminal activities.
More ominous news breaking this morning. Employees at USAID's headquarters in Washington, D.C. say they were told to stay home after receiving an unexpected early morning email right before the start of the workday. By the way, don't worry right now, I'm not driving, I'm just a passenger in the car. The email instructed all USAID workers in the Capitol to remain at home. Per CNN, the email read the following, quote, "At the direction of agency leadership, the USAID headquarters at the Ronald Reagan Building in Washington, D.C. will be closed to agency personnel on Monday, February 3rd, 2025. Agency personnel normally assigned to work at USAID headquarters will work remotely tomorrow, with the exception of personnel with essential on-site and building maintenance functions individually contacted by senior leadership." The email was sent just hours after Elon Musk was speaking about USAID on a Twitter Spaces, saying that Donald Trump agrees with him that the agency needs to be shut down. Musk over the weekend also repeatedly called the people who run USAID criminals. Over the weekend, Trump also said the agency, which helps with humanitarian relief and foreign aid, is run by a bunch of lunatics. To stay up to date on all the news, follow us
Department,
now.
USAID and the National Endowment for Democracy. Now USAID is, a very notorious. It's sort of a switch player. There's no aid in USAID, by the way. That's your brain is being tricked when you see the phrase USAID. It's not an aid organization. The aid in USAID stands for U.S. Agency for International Development. It is developing internationally around the world all of the institutions that the State Department needs to use. So when they are capacity building activist groups in a foreign country, that's because the State Department wants those activists there. Now, USAID, for the first time in its history, was created in the early 1960s by JFK, 1961. It was created because you had all of this intelligence, statecraft, and military support and logistical aid that was tripping over itself, basically. The military would be funding, would be running aid to certain groups in the region. The State Department would be running aid to certain groups in the region. The intelligence community would, and there was no sort of central coordinator of those capacity building operations. So USAID, by the way, is a $50 billion budget. The entirety of the intelligence community is only $72 billion. So it is more than the CIA and more than the State Department.
Wow.
And aid is basically, USAID is effectively a switch player to assist the Pentagon with on the national security front, to assist the State Department on the national interest front, or to assist the intelligence community on a sort of clandestine
2021, operation. The U.S. Special Forces Perspective put out an entire instruction manual for how the U.S. military can work with the State Department and our intelligence services to organize a rent-a-riot, to destabilize a country in order to bring them to the negotiating table. They gave an example of a hypothetical West African country where a member of U.S. Special Forces is on a separate mission, driving down a highway, and notices a billboard for Chinese infrastructure investment into a new port in this Western African country. They do their own investigation where, in theory, China would then be able to project naval influence into the Atlantic Ocean. What the Special Forces Guide calls for is coordination with the State Department, coordination with our intelligence services, coordination with our psychological operations unit to take all of our assets in that West African region. In this hypothetical, they go through how they would activate all their media assets, all of their civil society institutional assets, and all their union assets to have the union labor pool in that West African country, and created this whole social media campaign to inflame the sentiments of the West African labor union workforce who were working for Chinese companies at the time. And it was to destabilize the country, to bring all of the Chinese production in the region to a halt, and to put all these Africans out of jobs, and to bring the African government effectively to a standstill. At the same time, in their own Special Forces manual, it called for support from USAID to provide these same striking miners alternative jobs, so that while they were striking from the Chinese labor companies, they were still getting paid by U.S. taxpayers. So they were financially bribed effectively to boycott Chinese industry and to devastate their own country's government, create this crisis, and then use the State Department delegation to go back to the negotiating table with the West African government and promise to end the destabilization if the development was halted.